Welcome to what is going to be the first ever actual chess video on the channel, so these are exciting times to be sure. Now, over the past little bit here, probably about a month or so, we've had an internet celebrity pop up by the name of Deng, I believe is how you'd say it, who's actually a hippo inside a zoo in Thailand that everybody absolutely loves on the internet. So chess.com, of course, cashed in on this, and they've introduced some new bots that we can play against, which are actually going to be the hippos. So now just ignore the fact that I've already beaten the easy one here. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to go ahead and play it anyways. Now that in consideration, something I've noticed interesting about these bots is, first of all, their rating system is like easy, medium, and then hard. Generally, the bots, as you can see here, they're going to have like an ELO associated with it, so you can kind of see what their rating is. Now, keep in mind, my chess journey is still fairly new, all things considered, so I am actually only rated 776 at the moment. So it's very possible that I get my butt kicked by one of these bots, but we'll certainly see if we can give them a run for their money. Now, there doesn't seem to be any sort of rewards or anything like that for these bots, so I'm not entirely sure, like, what the collaboration is, or if there even is one, or if this is just for fun. I'm assuming it's just for fun, but let's go ahead. Let's hop into it here against the easy bot. And it looks like we are actually playing with white. So I'll probably go ahead and try to do like a Queen's Gambit or a Catalan style opening. We do actually have f6 coming out from the knight, which is a little bit interesting. So we'll just go ahead. We'll keep developing here. That being said, though, he can hop into the middle of the board there, which would be a bit annoying. I'll develop this pawn first, and then we can always just develop the knight after to kind of cover that as well. So let's go ahead here and let's do exactly that. Essentially, we're probably going to see pawn takes here, I would think, because they have a flank pawn coming in for the main pawn, but we have the queen out to a5 for some reason, which is a bit interesting. So she is actually pinning this knight in here, which is a little bit annoying to be sure. I think we'll go ahead and open up with our bishop out to d2, though. That way we are removing that pin, so we can move our king around a little bit. And then I think we'll actually go ahead and open up with e4 here as well, so we can kind of get that strong center going. I think we'll fianchetto on the right-hand side here, so on the king's side, and get our bishop out possibly. Now, this knight is moving in. He can, of course, take on h2 here, and then he can, of course, take on f2 as well. Both of those positions are covered, though, so technically we would have to move our king up here if he decides to take, and then all we'd have to do is just move the rook up if he decides to take there. It would be a little bit annoying, to be sure, losing castling privileges. He is also threatening to go here, but of course that is covered. And then if he goes basically like here or anything like that, we're just going to take it with a pawn. So there's not too much of a threat to the knight there at the moment, unless I'm missing something crazy, which I am a 776, so it's possible that I am. But let's go ahead. We could also potentially just develop our knight as well. You know what? I think we might do that too. So we could also just move our file knight here out to h3, which would then kind of counter this move in here as well, right? Because our knight would actually cover it from that square. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. We can still fianchetto our bishop out the back as well. Again, this queen is not actually pinning anything here. At some point, we could do the move a3 and then b4 as well to kind of get up there and be a little bit annoying, because then if they take, I would just essentially take back, and then the rook is opened up on the queen. If the queen takes, then it's going to be a queen for a rook trade, so I think the queen would probably fall back. That being said, the queen is also a little bit trapped here because they have played the move, but we're probably analyzing this a little bit too much considering we're playing a hippo on an easy rating. So let's just go ahead. Let's move for a g3 here so we can fianchetto the bishop and hopefully move into a castled position. So let's go ahead. Let's do that. Is there a threat here? There kind of is, because that pawn is not really hanging because our bishop does cover it. However, if we fianchetto the bishop, that pawn is actually going to be free for the taking, essentially, which would be a little bit annoying. So how can we cover that? Well, we can go ahead and do our b3 move here. And then that does give us an additional defender, of course, onto that pawn there. We do have a move coming out on this side here, too. Interesting. It looks like they're trying to break open the board, possibly. We do, of course, have the bishop covering. We have the knight covering. So it is a 2 times defended piece. Now, if they take and we take with the bishop, we are actually going to have an attack all the way down this sight line right here as well to the rook. And the rook is essentially trapped because none of these pieces have moved. So we'll actually go ahead and we'll just castle here. and kind of hope that they take that pawn, in all honesty. They are adding an attacker here as well, which currently is not covered. So that is a little bit unfortunate. How can we cover that? There's a couple ways we can do it. We could do a bishop move since our knight is no longer pinned, of course. So we could do bishop here, which would then cover. Oops. Do bishop here, which would cover. We could, of course, that would also open up the queen as an additional defender. Because we do have two pieces attacking it, right? So we do have to be careful about that. Doing something like that wouldn't really get us any sort of a bonus because we're covering these squares, not really the one that's in danger. So I think we'll go ahead and do this because then again, we do have the two pieces that are covering it. And we do have a third attacker coming in now as well. And we have a squeak coming out from Deng too. I think what might be the play here actually would be to go ahead and close the center, which is actually something that I could have just done last move as well. Though if I do that, that does leave my knight hanging, unfortunately. So by closing the center, I mean to move this pawn forward into d5, which would then pressure their knight, right? So technically my knight would be hanging to the bishop, but that would also apply pressure to their knight, and it would just be a question of which the bot puts more priority on, I suppose, right? So we could definitely do that. That being said as well, so let's say they come in, they take. Let's say we take here. Then the bishop is still just going to be on this square right here. So we could easily do... I don't know, actually. It would be tough, but I think we might move our knight first. So we can go ahead and do like a knight move like this and just get him out of the way. That does still leave two attackers here, which is a little bit annoying, though. Very, very annoying, actually. So what can we do? We can go ahead and apply some pressure as well if needed somewhere else on the board. We can also actually move this knight here, which will then make him an additional defender on that pawn as well. And it'll also get him out of danger. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then next move, of course, we can go ahead and close the center. They move the king instead of castling for some reason. Now, if I were to just close the center here, that is actually going to be a blunder because that would open up the line of sight all the way to my rook, of course. So we don't want to lose the rook, so we'll probably go ahead and do maybe a rook move in the next turn or so. The problem with moving the rook right now is that would actually, of course, leave the pawn hanging as well. So there's many things to consider here. We could just go ahead and do like a developing queen move as well, something like moving here, which would then cover that pawn, still keep the coverage in the center. We still got the coverage there as well. Then the next move, we can essentially move our rook onto b1. Generally, you want to develop the rooks anyways. So we could, of course, go ahead and do that. I think that's probably going to be our best move for the time being, just because I do want to close this center off and kind of remove any sort of attacking positions they might have. Now, they are offering a queen trade here. Let's see, would that be advantageous? So currently the pawn, we have one defender, two defenders, three defenders, and that's about it. They have one attacker, two attackers, and three attackers. So all things considered, it would end up being a semi-equal trade. That being said, though, one of their attackers is a pawn, which is significantly less material than what I'm defending with. So I don't think a queen trade is really advantageous. It might be acceptable if we have the queen trade kind of on our terms. So I think we'll go ahead and do a move maybe like, rook to d1. Because then if their queen comes in, I can recapture with the rook, which will still keep the defense up on those pieces. So I think that's probably going to be the move. We could also do something like pawn here, which would then kick the knight. And if the knight gets kicked, he has this as a square, this, where he would be pretty safe. He can, of course, take, but both of those squares are defended. So I think that might be a good play, essentially, just to try and see if we can get the knight out of here. They do actually take, which means that we will take back with our bishop. Just like so. We're probably going to see a capture coming in here, I would imagine. Yes, and it is actually a check as well. Now, we do have to go ahead and take, because if we block, we can't trade that out, and then my rook is also open for the taking. If we take, we're probably going to see a pawn capture here, I would imagine, so it is a little bit unfortunate. We aren't really losing material, though, apart from that initial pawn that we lost, so I'm perfectly fine with that, because trading the bishop for the knight is a very good trade, in my opinion, right? So getting their bishop, losing my knight, I definitely prioritize my bishops a little bit more. And then, of course, on this side, we do still have that knight that can be taken as well. So I do think taking that knight is going to be a very, very solid play. We don't have any pressure anymore on this rook here either because the bishop is gone, so we'll just go ahead and take. We're probably going to see a pawn capture come in this way, I would imagine. No, it comes in the other way. Okay. So now there's a few different squares that we can move our knight to here that are safe, right? So currently this bishop is blocked in. There's not really anything he can do there. We could go ahead and move our knight here, which doesn't really pressure anything. We are kind of threatening to go, you know, maybe here if that pawn moves or something like that, but the bishop still covers it. We are also threatening to go, you know, here and then put the king in check. But they have already moved and lost their castling privileges, although that does also give us a fork onto the rook. So I think that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and do something like that. And of course, those pawns can't really do anything about it. So we do actually get the fork here. The bot does, of course, blunder that. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to pre-move that capture. That's another piece of material for us. Now, we do also have the problem here where, of course, the bot is threatened to take. Now, if he takes, we can essentially just go back like this. I think what we'll probably end up doing is we'll just go ahead and we'll move this pawn forward maybe at some point. This is also just a free pawn, by the way. They moved it up and there's no way to trade that out. So I think that might be a solid way to go to get ourselves a little bit more material. And we are, of course, ahead by 7 points of material currently. Now, this is adding an attacker here, adding an attacker here. It does also open up the rook, though. So I think we'll just go ahead and move this pawn forward at this point, which then allows us a clear line of sight down here to the rook. So they do actually move the rook. So that's adding a little bit of pressure here, right? Because if takes, I can't really take back because then, well, I could actually. So we could just go ahead and do this and add another defender because we do have pressure coming all the way down, right? So we'll just go ahead and add another defender. It also allows us to develop our rook at the same time. Now, this particular pawn is a little bit weak at the moment, just due to where he's positioned. So there's a couple ways we can defend it. We can do bishop back to f4, which would allow us some additional defense there. And then that also opens up a move like pawn to e6, which then allows our bishop to see all the way down once again to that rook there, right? So the knight coming back here is essentially an attempt to get our bishop to come in and then trade out from the pawn, most likely. So we'll actually go ahead and do this because then as soon as this pawn move happens, we can essentially just open up some windows for ourselves to do nasty things, right? So we'll go ahead and do this. And then, of course, if they just move or something like that, we can well, they just lost their rook. All right. So we'll go ahead and take that. Now we're going to see the pawn capture, or not the pawn, rather, the knight capture. So we'll just go ahead. We'll take this pawn back. We're opening up an attack, of course, on their knight as well. And then we do just have to worry about the bishop that can do some crazy things, although the bishop is now blocked by the knight. Bishop can't go here because my bishop will just take him out. He can go here, which is kind of just an empty attack because we can just move a defender over, right, and we're good to go. I think what we might do next is go ahead and perhaps we can try to win some material once again. So we could do a move like this, moving the pawn up and go for a pawn break to get, you know, essentially this pawn out and maybe past. That being said, though, I do think I like a move like this a little bit better, where we're still you know, developing our rooks. We don't see pawn up, which is crazy. So that is essentially just a free pawn now. I imagine what we'll see next is probably something like king here, because then that does completely leave our knight hanging, because no matter where he goes, he would be capturable. So I think we'll just go ahead essentially and put the king into check, and we will move our knight forward. Now, a couple things we can do here. We can get our king to safety, of course. We can go here. I think we'll just go, our knight rather. We'll just go ahead and get the knight to safety, I think. There's some other moves we could have done, like capturing as well, if you wanted to be crazy with it. For these intents and purposes, what I think I might do is, I think I'll just go ahead and take this pawn. Let's see, the knight can go there, the knight can go there and there. That does add an extra attacker, but we can always just move over and defend. That being said, I don't really want to lose a whole lot of material trying to defend this pawn. We can also just do something simple, like bishop back as well, right? Inviting that trade. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and probably take this pawn next move. So the bishop does actually come back now that this position's open, which is fine. It's not threatening anything. there would be a minimum of like 2 to 3 moves needed to actually get some sort of an attack. Now, I think we'll go ahead and move bishop back up to get this line of sight. And then I think what I might do is I might actually sack the bishop by moving it to this square so that the opposing bishop comes out, and then I can essentially come in and get some forks on material here, right? So I think we'll do that. We might see this come back. I doubt it, though, because that'd just be a free bishop. We do actually see some pressure coming in onto our rook, which is interesting. So that is a very good move. I think what we'll go ahead and do here is just kind of throw in an intermediate move check. This pawn is actually covered by the knight as well, right? So we can't really take that. If we move here, it's going to block our bishop. So I think we'll just go ahead and we'll move back. Right now, we can't actually do the exact move that we were thinking of previously. But what we can do, okay, we can take a free bishop. Sure, I'll do that. We do have the knight moving now. We can go ahead and throw in a check here as well if we want to. I think we'll do that. And we're going to see the king move to one of these squares. Then we're going to go ahead and not lose our rook, which I almost did. Let's see. So, again, we could kind of pursue that pawn break here as well, right? I'd have to move my king up, though, so he can recapture. Once that happens, we can essentially move ourselves up to take out this pawn. And we'll have a little bit of a material advantage there as well. Now, let's see. We could also throw in another check here. The knight can't capture because he is pinned to the king. So then we could potentially open up that that knight for capture as well, depending on where the king goes, of course. So I think we'll do this. Actually, no, because that's just a hanging bishop now. Although that would be their last piece of material left. We can also essentially just start moving up our pawns here, right? So we might also see pawn in to force our bishop back. That is an interesting move. Unfortunately, can't really make use of it. So essentially what we can do here is like a discovered check, right? So we can move our bishop, and then the rook is going to have line of sight to the king. So he's going to be able to attack them, but there's not really any sort of a strat there because they've done a good job of keeping almost everything on light squares, except for their pawn. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. And then we do have a better position here now with the bishop as well, where we can actually provide some coverage and whatnot. We can also throw in another check and just keep forcing the king away. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. And then we can actually move the rook down here as well. And then what we can do is go ahead and throw another rook onto this file, perhaps, or we could go here. So if we go here and check, the king can go here, which would be problematic for my rook. The king can also go here. If we go here, of course, that is just a hanging, free piece of material. So I think we might also move the knight, because if the knight goes here, it's attacking that pawn. There's not really much that can be done. We could also just, defend. I don't know why it's doing this now all of a sudden where I can't, click and drag, but whatever. We'll go ahead and we'll put the rook over here just to double up our rooks, essentially. Yeah, so we did see the king coming over to attack that rook. There's not much that he can do, though. So we'll go ahead and move over to here. And then this is a free pawn, essentially, and it's also actually going to place the king into check. King has to go back that way. And then, of course, we can actually do this, where we're probably going to see the knight come out and capture, because if he doesn't, well, that's just a free knight. So we'll take the free knight as well. There's a reason this is an easy bot, I suppose. We'll go ahead and start applying a little bit more pressure to the king here as well, I think. So the king is probably going to come down and try to take out this pawn, would be his smartest move. So I think we'll just go ahead and throw in a check there, which then forces him off. We can go ahead and throw in another check here as well. King might go here, in which case we can just check him again because the knight does protect that square. And now what we'll do, I think, is we'll just go over here, pre-move and capture that pawn. Their pawn's moving forward a little bit. That's perfectly fine. We will go ahead and capture this pawn. We're probably going to see this pawn pushing at some point. We'll go ahead and protect our knight by capturing that. And we'll just go ahead and move out of the way here. Not too much of a threat that we're facing. So we'll do that. And then what we can do here is we can start going for like a ladder mate of sorts. I'm just going to do this, though, just so we can simplify the position and get this pawn off the board, just because I want to. So we're down to this as the last squares. Essentially, we do control this square and this square. King can't capture, of course, it is defended, but he can capture this if he gets back there. So I think we'll just go ahead and do a move like that. Now we'll go ahead and do this. And we do have a classic ladder mate right there. So we do take out Cute Moo, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page just to see if I can get rid of the glitch where it's not allowing me to actually move my pieces. So we'll go ahead and we'll fight the medium Moo, and we'll actually be playing as black. So with this, I think I'm probably going to want to do something like a King's Indian. Perhaps it's definitely one of my favorite openings as the black pieces. We'll probably go ahead and do something like maybe D6. We could also do E5 here and match. E5, the queen's probably going to come out to do some crazy things, right? And then, or not there rather, but over here, target my pawn. If that happens, we can essentially just develop our knight though as well. So I think we'll just go ahead and match for the time being. Now, I don't have the strongest concepts of, openings and whatnot, so I am probably going to be a little bit weaker than some other players, so just take that into consideration. We do have the bishop coming out that's pressuring my knight. And of course, the knight is the defender against the piece in the middle there, right? So the knight can take if this trade happens. How are we going to defend that? I think we'll go ahead and we'll play something like maybe bishop out, just because that does kind of mess up my whole, King's Indian sort of stuff going on, but that is a decent defensive move for the time being. Since we're not really interested in pushing the bishop out this way, we could also just do pawn protects and then takes if takes, which would be a trade that benefits me, I would say. So they do add an additional attacker there, which is annoying. And we are actually pinned as well. So I think we'll go ahead and just kind of ask him a question here and see, what exactly are you doing here, sir? Why are you going after my knight? Are you going to take it? We'll just pre-move the recapture in case they do. And now they do take. Now the thing with this is if I take back, it is actually going to open up both of our queens. I don't currently have a way to recapture my queen that wouldn't involve moving my king. So they are up a pawn, of course, as well, because they did get the pawn in the center. So I think we'll just go ahead and continue development of our pieces. We're probably going to see a take. We don't, actually. So they just push the pawn forward, which is interesting. That does actually allow us to get a little bit more development completed with our bishop as well. Their queen comes forward a little bit there. I think here we're going to go ahead and fianchetto. Of course, the fianchetto does add some additional pressure here. So if their dark square bishop moves, we can potentially target that pawn, of course. We do have doubled pawn structure here too, which is a bit annoying to say the least, right? So that is something to consider as well. Queen is potentially targeting over this way, potentially targeting here. But both of those squares are covered, of course. So I think we'll go ahead and do a move like this, perhaps. If pushes, then takes. However, we don't really have a way to recapture, so that would be a bit of a shame. We'll go ahead and castle here, get ourselves a little bit more protected. Now, we can go ahead and take this as well. The only issue if we do, of course, is we don't really have a way to recapture. Deng is grumbling at me there in the top right. So if pushes, takes, that definitely favors us. We can potentially get rid of that doubled pawn structure as well. So I think pushing here is the play. I just kind of fumbled a bishop. I didn't notice that that was under attack. It's not the worst thing in the world, though. This fork definitely is, right? So if we didn't have a pawn here that could capture, we'd definitely be kind of screwed. However, a bishop for a knight trade is definitely acceptable. And as you can see, we have actually equalized material here now as well. So the queen is coming here, the queen is targeting this, and the queen is targeting this. Also targeting this. Not much of a threat. Queen covers. This is covered. This isn't covered, but it's not under attack at the moment. What we could do here as well is we could essentially just go ahead and take ourselves a free pawn. I think that's a good move. Now, we do have a push coming in from the king side, which is interesting, especially considering that they just castled on that side. And that does appear to be another free pawn, although if I take it, then this particular pawn is going to be under attack. So I think what we might do instead is we might just go ahead and make a move like this, because the bishop is now going to see that as well. So if they don't... Okay, so I was going to say if they don't see it, then we can essentially set up like a potential checkmate here in a couple turns, right? Because there's not really much you can do once the queen and the bishop are aligned on that square. Now, what can we do? Well, we can try to add some danger into the position by potentially moving a knight here. The bishop is directly under attack, though, so I think we could just go ahead and move the bishop back fairly safely. There's not really an attack that they can use to follow up. And they do move the king, so we'll just go ahead and do this. And then, of course, there is two attackers here, which is a bit unfortunate. So I think it... Actually, no. So we have coverage, coverage, coverage. So if takes, then probably takes, 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 and we're good. I think, if I'm calculating that correctly. Though this pawn is still technically hanging if we do that, so that could be a free pawn as well. Though we could just move one of our rooks over and then they can get coverage. So I think we'll go ahead and take. If we do a play like this as well, it's going to be a little bit tricky because we are targeting the rook, so that might force the rook off of that particular line, which would be nice. We do actually have the rook move. So what we can do now is we can go here and fork these two pieces. That rook move isn't really threatening anything. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll just go ahead and... Okay, so now we can start doing our takes because we do actually have an additional attacker on this square as well. So I think that'll be the play here. Boom. And we are targeting this, so I'm okay making that trade, maybe, am I? I might have just blundered the knight, actually. I think I did. I calculated that wrong. We are equal in material still, though. So we do lose the knight. Where we're at currently, the bishop can take us. Of course, this pawn is technically not hanging at the moment. So I think we could just go ahead and take here without too much trouble. And then we're probably going to see takes. Yes. So then what we could do is we could technically do something like this. Kind of force the king off this line. And then we can... Ooh, okay, this is tricky. All right. So I think we can go ahead and do something like this once again, and again, force him potentially back here is kind of what we're looking for. We can do our rook trade now, essentially, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and do this. Looks pretty decent. So we are still targeting this pawn. If we take this pawn, we are essentially forking these pieces. Now, the knight is protected technically by the queen, but the rook is not protected. If the rook moves, we can also easily target this pawn, depending on where he goes. We could also do something like this, which might maybe be a nicer fork. So we are hitting the king, we're hitting the pawn, we're hitting the rook. So I think we'll go ahead, we'll take ourselves a free rook here. This is still unprotected. Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'll see the queen come in at some point there. We can go ahead and start pushing as well. The queen isn't really hitting anything here. She is hitting this, which is a little bit annoying, I won't lie. The rook can't really defend it either. The queen can't really make it to a spot where she's going to be able to defend it, unfortunately. So I think we'll just go ahead and do this. And then we'll add some pressure to that knight as well as both these pawns. We do see the queen come back, so she is attempting to protect that knight, of course. And I think this might be a good time to not move our rook and just blunder this pawn. We could also just go ahead and start pushing our king forward as well. This is, although, a free pawn. That being said, though, then if the queen were to do like some sort of a discovered attack on us by moving that knight, then we're kind of in a bad spot, of course. So we'll still go ahead and we'll take the pawn. Why not? Free material is never a bad thing. She is attacking here. She's defending here, rather. And then still, of course, defending that knight as well. This pawn is no longer under attack, though. However, this one is. So we'll go ahead and we'll defend that particular pawn. because I do want to hold on to that pawn. She's not really attacking anything here, still maintaining control of the knight, of course. I'm not sure if you can hear that beeping, but that's essentially going to be my headset dying, so that's always fun. In this move, we could go ahead and move knight up, although that would be kind of a blunder, because then queen check, and then no matter what the king does, we're going to lose that rook, essentially. So we do still have to be a little bit careful here. That being said, we do also have limited moves for our queen, unfortunately. We can go ahead and do something like this, though, which would then lock off that line of support, which then gives us like a free knight. It does take with check, and she still forks our bishop, or our rook, rather. I failed to see that. That is unfortunate. So our rook has fallen. We'll go ahead and do this, though. Another check coming in. This will end up, to some extent, just being free development for us as well, because we are now fairly protected from the queen. Our pawn is protected, of course. What is this threatening? This is threatening to go here, which isn't going to do much. It's also threatening to go here, which is essentially another check, and there's not really going to be much I can do. That might be mate, actually. So we do kind of have to defend against that if at all possible. There's not really a solid way that we can do that, because if we go here, it's going to force the king to move, at which point, yes, I do believe that is mate. So we could also move our pawn up, which then gives us an escape square. Let's see. Let us see here. I think that's probably the only play, really. If pawn forward, pawn takes, which puts us in check, you can always move over here. So let's go ahead and do that. That's the only thing that will keep us from being mated, I do believe. That is checkmate anyways. All right, let's go ahead and try that again. All right, so we're playing with the white pieces against Deng, and this is, of course, going to be the medium level bot. So let's go ahead and see what we can make happen here. We have queen's pawn opening, of course. I am actually going to play a queen's gambit / Catalan sort of setup here. I think we'll go ahead and fianchetto. We do get a check coming in there, which is certainly a little bit annoying. We can also defend, though, by moving our bishop over, which would then counterattack the queen. Queen doesn't really have anywhere to go except all the way back. The only downside to this, of course, is we do block our queen as well. We'll go ahead and we'll move that bishop out, I believe. If there's a take that happens here, I'm going to push this pawn all the way up to the center. There isn't, though, so I think it might be almost time that we go ahead and take as well. Let's see here. What can we do? We can get an additional defender on this pawn too, which would be quite nice. So I think we'll go ahead and do that. Open ourselves up for castling on this next move. We do have an additional attacker coming in from the flank pawn there as well. So we'll go ahead. We'll take, I do believe, right? Because they can take both ways, but we're equal material. And then if the queen takes, we can essentially move our knight somewhere. Not there. Maybe, that's a tough one, actually. We can move here. If the queen takes, of course, and then we do actually have a discovered attack on the queen. However, we don't have coverage on the center pawn if that happens. So, it might also be a good move. Just go ahead and do regular developing as well. Although, no, we'll take. We'll deal with the problem when we get there, essentially. Okay, so we are equal. Nothing too crazy there. I think we'll go ahead and perhaps do something like this. Although that pawn is going to be very annoying. So, could also go ahead and block the pawn. We could also just castle here and just play kind of like a waiting move and see what they have for us. So I do bring the knight out, of course adding an additional attacker to this square, which is a bit annoying. Now might be a good time to do a move like this. And if we see a push, we can easily take. This is targeting this as well as this, which would be a bit dangerous, because if they get in here, we don't really have anything to defend it. Although, again, we move and it's a discovered attack. So, we can also go here. I think, for the time being, what could be a decent move, actually, is to attack the queen as well. So if we move the bishop here, it's going to attack the queen. If knight takes, then we take, and we open up our rook file too. We can also just do, principled chess, and we can just develop here. That does still leave the knight to hop in here. Actually, no, so that does cover the knight hopping in as well. So we'll just go ahead and do that. And it does add a little bit more pressure to that pawn there as well. Now, my headset keeps beeping at me, presumably because it is close to death. So we'll go ahead and see if we can plug that in here. The nice thing about playing the bots, of course, is we're not under any sort of time constraints. Let's see if I can find it here. We're plugged in. We're good to go. We're not going to die. Let's see. We did kind of block our bishop development and attack, of course. We do have pressure here as well as here, though. And we are seeing this move come out as well from black, which is a bit of an interesting move. So we're probably going to see this coming next, I would imagine, because then that's going to cover the knight hopping in. Let's just go ahead and start pushing our pawns. I would say take a little bit more space away from them. We do, of course, have that knight hopping in, which is annoying, so it does hit here and here, as well as this, so it hits basically everything, in all honesty. If I take, then we're obviously going to see the pawn come in and take, which would be a bit annoying, because then that does mean that my knight has to move, which then removes the coverage from this particular square. So, at this point, I do have to ask myself, essentially, if I'm okay sacrificing potentially a bishop, because I do think the bishop is probably what they're going to take. I think, yes, I probably am. Do I want to? Not really. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a take, because then this opens up and it does leave a discovered attack on that pawn, right? So we're probably going to lose this pawn to the queen, but then, of course, we will have that open attack as well. So we'll go ahead and take. Now we will have to move our knight out. And it is tricky because they did play this move previously, so that would have been an indicator of that coming as well. Because now our knight can't go there. He can't, well, he can actually go there because the queen can't take, of course. That does also open up some stuff where we can get in here. If we get in here, of course, we are hitting the rook, and then the king kind of has to move to take it. So I think that would be a decent move. Make them lose their castling privileges, essentially. This, for all intents and purposes, is a free pawn, which then opens up a line of sight to our rook as well. So we will go ahead and take that, or to their rook, rather. Okay, so they are proposing a rook for a rook trade here. Interesting. Given black's position, I do have to say that I am probably okay with that, in all honesty. So let's go ahead and do this. They don't take back my rook. Interesting. Okay, so we have gained a material advantage then in that case. This, of course, threatening and taking away my light squared control, which is a bit annoying. We'll go ahead. We'll move our rook off that line just so that we don't, you know, get absolutely destroyed. Now, we could do something like, what is the queen targeting? Well, the queen is trying to checkmate us, actually. So if the queen gets there, that is checkmate next turn, of course. We could do a couple things here. So we can do pawn up, take that square away, right? Because then the queen can't come in here. Does that open up any other weaknesses inside our structure? Not really, and it does actually get protection from the knight as well. So I do think that would be a decent way to go. The downside is this does, once again, leave our pawn pretty much open for the capture. But we'll go ahead and do it. Pawn is probably going to fall. Yep. So we'll go ahead and do something like this and propose a queen trade as well. If the queen trade happens, I probably want to go ahead and capture that way. I just blundered a bishop, by the way. That is not very nice. For some reason in my head, I thought that was the pawn I was moving. Yeah, and then so she does go ahead and take that pawn. We can do some crazy things here. So the queen is threatening. I think we'll probably just go ahead and double, though. Yeah. Okay, so they are proposing that trade. I'll definitely go ahead and take that trade. And then this is basically pinned here because it's still not going to do much, though, because we can just take. King can't retake because the knights are, or the rooks are protecting each other. That was basically their only defensive move that saved them. So I think here we'll go ahead and start moving the king. And blunder a piece while we're at it. This is going very well, thank you. let's see. Let's go ahead and do this. Because then we're forcing the king up. And then we'll just go ahead and take a free rook as well. So let's do that. Inside the mind of a 700. We do, of course, lose both of those pieces. We'll go ahead and apply a little bit of pressure here, though the pawn can just move, in which case there's not a whole lot of pressure. We can also do something like, moving up. This isn't really targeting anything at the moment, so I think we're okay with that. We can also just move the king. Get into a bit of a more advantageous position there. I think we'll do something like this. Because then up, when we do have two defenders attacking it. So that'll be a good move. So we'll go ahead and take. Just a bunch of trades. This pawn is hanging. We can also get the rook back down here like this. I think we'll start by taking like this, though, because then we can always just move back down here, too. We'll go ahead and do that. Probably going to see some sort of a silly move. A very silly move, as a matter of fact. Let's see. So we can do... We can do something like this, because then as soon as this pawn moves, or as soon as this bishop moves, we essentially just have them skewered there, right? And let's see here. Definitely a little bit shady. That being said, though, this is covered. Let's see. What's the best way to do this? So we can, of course, go here, target that. We can, of course, go here as well, target that, which I think is probably our best move. Yeah, because then there's not really a way that they can, like, counterplay that, essentially. So here, we'll just get a classic ladder mate, and we're good to go. Though it wasn't mate, because they still have a pawn. So I celebrated a little bit too early. I think... so we can do takes and simplify the position. Obviously, the pawn's going to take, but then we move over here, and we have the line of sight. So I think we'll sacrifice the rook. Yeah, something like that. They're probably going to promote. Not a big deal. Now all we have to do is essentially this, and then we'll just walk these pieces up the board here. Now, obviously, I don't particularly want to lose my pawn, so we'll just do this. Now, this is 100% protected. Do this, and we'll just kind of keep moving forward here. We can't do that, though, unfortunately. But we can do this, which then forces the king out into a queen promotion. Now, we can essentially just give up this pawn to clear out some space here. Yeah, go ahead and take it. Essentially, what we'll do is we'll just force you off that line. Perfect. Now, we can also do something like this. The annoying part is he can slip behind. Yes, so he's being a little bit elusive, to be sure. I hope he takes the pawn, though. That would be nice. Go ahead and take it. No, he does not want to take it. Okay. We'll just go ahead and we'll keep moving forward then, and we'll become a queen. And there it is. Checkmate against Curious Moo. So we have beat the two bots so far. So I've had a few attempts here to beat the Angry Moo. This is essentially going to be the last attempt to do it. We're going to see if we can make this happen here. So I don't know what the ELO rating of this particular bot is going to be, and I'm only a 776 myself, so I'm not the strongest player by any means, but it's interesting to see what we can make happen here. So let's go ahead and let's get our knight out here. Shaking intensifies. We do have the knight coming out to c3 from the opponent as well, now that they've moved that pawn out, of course. Let's go ahead and start to fight for the center, I would say, with a move perhaps like that, because then we can essentially go d5 there at some point. I am just thinking, so this guy can come into here or here, which would be certainly a bit annoying. Definitely not too dangerous, though. So I think we'll go ahead and do this. And then just recapture instantly if they decide to capture. They don't, interestingly enough. So we could also get ourselves an additional defender by moving up. They could also just come in and close the center, though, then, which would also kind of trap our knight. Although, if they do, then that is kind of just free development, where we can go here and then target the pawn, of course. But so they do take, finally. We're going to go ahead and take back as well. And a knight does come in now. So the knight is essentially looking to hit here, which would then be a fork. The knight can also hit here, and it can hit here as well as here. So we'll just go ahead and do this. And let's see. So we have an idea of this, then this. We do have a check coming in. So if we block, that'll essentially be the best play, I think, because we can capture back. And we are, of course, winning the tempo on that particular piece as well. So I think we'll go ahead and castle here is probably our best move. Although we can also do queen up, which would potentially force the knight out, which would be quite nice prior to castling. So we do actually get a defensive posture there, of course, where they are placing their pawn behind the knight. I think another potential move here for us is this, adding another attacker to the knight. And they do add a defender. So I think at this point in time, we'll go ahead and try to remove the pawn as a potential defender. So if takes, then takes. We don't really have a way to do anything about that currently. So what we can do is, it's a good question. What can we do? We could go ahead and move our knight here, reroute. We could also move this knight. Oops. We could also move this knight as a potential attacker here. We can also move up and then kick the bishop. I think that's probably going to be our best play for the time being. This bishop coming in to target that, which would be very annoying. Let's see, what's the best move against that? Well, we can go ahead and take the knight, which would remove the additional attacker. We'll probably get taken here, which then means that we can move out here like this. So I think that's probably going to be our best bet. Pawn in, yep. So then we can do something like this, which will then threaten that. We do actually have the knight coming in now as well, which is threatening the queen, threatening check. So we have to do something crazy here. There's a few things that we can do, obviously. So we can't capture. We can drop back. We can go here, which adds some pressure, which is honestly looking like our best move. And then we can also get something like this done as well. So I think that might be our best option. Okay, so we do lose a pawn there. The pawn was just hanging for a little bit. That's okay. We'll go ahead and do this. No, we won't, because then that's an unequal trade. So we can also go ahead and just do something like this, preparing for b5, which I think we'll do because danger levels they can take, but then we'll also just take. So that is perfect. Not really. We'll take, probably lose a rook here. And we do have a check coming in from the opponent, which is a little bit annoying to say the least. So we'll go ahead and move. It does remove my defender there, which is annoying. And I have to take. Because if we don't, we're going to lose the rook instead of the bishop. So we can now do nothing, apparently. Let's see. So what can we do? We can start pushing. We can also attack the queen, which could be a decent move. She does now come to defend that rook, which is a bit unfortunate, because I was hoping that we'd get that pawn to take the knight at some point, but now the rook does have the secondary defender, of course. We can attack their bishop, which now just goes to take the knight. I kind of fumbled that, certainly. Let's see here. We can do something like this, which will attack, and that bishop is kind of trapped. So the bishop does, for some intents and purposes, have to fall off from the defense of that particular pawn, although he can still easily come back, obviously. So we are now getting attacked by bishop. We'll just go ahead and do a move like that. That is, of course, a free pawn for the opponent. We'll go ahead and open up here, though, and see if we can get a free pawn as well. They do defend it there, of course. So I think we'll do a move like this, aiming to potentially trap the bishop. And I'm curious how they'll manage that. They do move it back. We can capture, of course, which will then open up a little bit more counterplay here. We do get checked, which isn't really threatening anything else, but it is threatening to take that pawn, of course. Checked once again. That is almost mate, damn near. We have one potential move. That is checkmate. Well, I certainly tried. I got outplayed a little bit by the bot, though, to be certain. That says that there's 3 missed wins. Let's go ahead and do an analysis here. Oops. Not the right thing to hit, apparently. Let's do the game review. Pygmy Hippo Hard bot. So the game rating, interestingly enough, if you can see that for their bot, is at 1650, and I apparently played at a 1050. I had 2 blunders. They had 1, 2 mistakes, 2 misses, unfortunately, but 10 best plays. Let's go ahead and play through the game here and see how it goes. So, book move, of course, we open up. Just keeping doing some plays here. Not what you would have played. What would you have played? Oh, that doesn't really help me. What is the best move? Best move is getting ready for the fianchetto. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so that's not good for development. We do defend there. This is an opportunity to prepare a bishop for development. Allows an opponent to kick a knight. How would I... Okay, ignored an opportunity. Doesn't show me how I'm kicking a knight, though, but I'm a little unfamiliar with the analysis. So this is an inaccuracy. What should I have done? Ah, okay, fair enough, because then there's not really a way to defend. Okay, fair enough. And take a look here. That is true. I did actually miss the en passant on that piece. I did miss the trade opportunity. Lots of mistakes coming in from us now, apparently. My move loses a pawn. It's that pawn there. So I should have went all the way up and defended it. That definitely was a blunder, to be fair. Didn't see it at the time, though. Bishop. So how should I have done it? Ah, okay, that's fair. Because then he couldn't have checked me again. So I did get out check the rook. And then, yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of the downfall there, where I didn't take with that particular pawn I shouldn't have taken. I should have just kind of... What would have been the best move, actually? So that's best move for them. Way, not much else I could do. Yeah, so I could have also blocked here, potentially, which is the best move, actually. Because then if takes, take. Just kidding, I can't. The bishop. Interesting. Well... Let me know down below if you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know if you've been able to beat the Deng as well. I'd be very interested to hear about it. That being said, as always, see you guys in the next video.